So 2022 marks the third year in a row where I haven't really rated any film a 10 out of 10. The last time being in 2019, where actually 3 films met the mark for me. Despite that, I think that 2022 has been an interesting year for cinema. I wouldn't say it's been amazing or great, but I'd say it was a year of unique, original films. Films that were incredibly creative and inventive and bold in their vision. The kind of films that were being pushed out of the cinema in recent years. On the other hand, I think it's also been a year where, for the most part, audiences finally sent a loud and clear message about being tired of these formulaic, soulless, virtue-signaling superhero flicks, as a lot of the usual tentpole blockbusters got buried by critics and audiences alike this year. And I think it might finally mark the start of a trend where perhaps the superhero era is starting to slowly die down. Anyhow, let's not waste any more time and let's get into my top 10 of 2022. So at number 10, All Quiet on the Western Front. It's great to observe a rising interest in telling World War I stories, as in the past most films have really focused on covering World War II as the sort of more cinematic and more glorious war. But All Quiet on the Western Front, based off the novel by Erich Maria Remarque, tells the story from the German point of view, something that automatically gives the film a fresh feel. It's rare to see a war movie told from the perspective of the losing side, and All Quiet on the Western Front does a great job of depicting the horrors of the Great War, unlike anything we've seen before. It's devastating in its portrayal of trench warfare, while also managing to express just the futility of war. At number 9, The Northman. Robert Eggers is cementing himself as one of the auteur directors working in the industry right now. The Northman is a result of a filmmaker that is fully committed to his vision of a story and is bold enough to follow through even if it might go against the grain of what modern audiences are used to seeing. He created a film that sounds and feels like an authentic Viking myth or legend. It's really been an experience watching this film in the cinema, and while it does have its flaws and it has bits that didn't quite land with me, like for example a bit of a messy third act and a terrible casting choice in Nicole Kidman. Overall, this is a bold film that subverts its genre and embraces its bold vision. In a sea of franchises and remakes, The Northman is a film that deserves to be celebrated and is a worthy addition to subgenre that is a dying breed these days, the historical epic. At number 8, Bones and All. Out of all the films this year, I found Bones and All the toughest to rate because I hate horror films. I just never watch them because I just hate being scared, and I have a pretty low tolerance for grotesque imagery. But I don't know, Bones and All was just so poetic and beautiful at times, and I simply couldn't deny the fact that this strange blend of horror and romance works, and that I am feeling precisely what Luca Guadagnino wants me to feel. Just like Call Me By Your Name, the film has these moments of just timeless poetry where it supplies you with iconic images, a beautiful score, and a duo of actors that are just perfect in their roles. Timothée Chalamet just reaffirming that, he is this generation's ultimate leading man. He has this timeless movie star quality to him that Guadagnino, he knows and exploits this. But it's not just Chalamet who shines here. Taylor Russell is actually really magical. She has this vulnerability and innocence that no doubt played a role in why she was chosen for this role. And together they just form just a fantastic, interesting couple that evokes nostalgia for all these great road trip movies of the past. I mean, Bonnie and Clyde obviously comes to mind, or Selma and Louise. There are just a couple of scenes in this film that I just really, really, really loved and are probably my favorite scenes of the year. Unfortunately, I can't get over my personal distaste for horror and gore. And even though the film does a really good job at balancing its two genres and finding the right tone, it's at times just way too disgusting for my taste. And it's one of the reasons, like, whenever I want to get back to this film, I just want to skip through all the scary parts and just watch the nice parts. And yeah, that sort of prevents me from rating this film higher. But one of the more interesting films of the year, and One of the most beautiful soundtracks of the year as well. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross make, this guitar theme and piano themes, something rather unusual for them, and they do a really beautiful job. At number 7, The Batman. I've already made a video about my thoughts on Matt Reeves' The Batman, but basically, to sum it up here, Reeves had just these giant shoes to fill as he was stepping in after Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, and I really think that I have to commend him that he chose to do something different and really brought in his own bold vision of what Batman and Gotham could be like. And I think it just takes a lot of guts to make a film like this, and although the final act kind of ruined what was otherwise, for me, like this perfect detective noir thriller, you can just see and feel the quality of the craft throughout most of the film, whether it's just really beautiful cinematography, unique cinematography as well, and the sound design, the soundtrack is really beautiful. In fact, I would say that the score for The Batman is my favorite score for the entire year, which makes it kind of ridiculous that it's not even on the Oscars shortlist. I don't understand that decision. And then also Robert Pattinson as the Batman, I think, is just a new and unique take, and Colin Farrell, surprisingly, as the Penguin. Actually, Colin Farrell has had a really good year in 2022. He's done 3 really good roles in the Batman, in 13 Lives, and in Banshees of Inisherin. So yeah, good for him, good for him. At number 6, Aftersun. Aftersun is a directorial debut by Charles Wells, and it is probably the tiniest film on this list with the smallest budget, but it packs an emotional punch unlike perhaps any other film this year. It is a deep meditation on depression, mental health, and recollection and memories, and at the same time it's just this beautiful, haunting coming-of-age story. It achieves a level of naturalism that I haven't really seen elsewhere, perhaps other than Richard Linklater movies, and Charles Wells does this by an emphasis on close-ups and the usage of long lenses, where we really don't see a lot of the background environment. The focus is always on the characters and their faces and emotions, and it just makes the whole picture more intimate and enables the father-daughter relationship to truly come through. The film also mixes in some VHS footage for added authenticity, and it really does feel like a meditation over someone's memories, and it just draws you in and lets you be part of this unique moment as if you were really on a holiday with these characters. And I think it deserves, to be praised, and I hope it can sneak in some Oscar noms, perhaps Paul Mescal for Best Actor, or maybe even the screenplay could get a nom for Best Original Screenplay. Fingers crossed. At number 5, Triangle of Sadness. Triangle of Sadness is the rare film that captures the feeling of being in society right now. It's this satire that just brilliantly exposes the hypocrisy and posturing that is so common, not just among the elites, but also among the working class these days. The young are depicted as insecure and cynical, often treating relationships as transactions, while the old are portrayed as, just brutally ignorant and condescending and out of touch. And while the film is a bit too obvious with its metaphors at times, I think it almost never fails to entertain, and I don't think I laughed harder at any other film this year. It's just been the most fun cinema experience when it comes to comedy for me. And Triangle of Sadness just has some of the most hilarious and absurd scenes of the year, while managing to consistently deliver a witty wink at the audience when it needs to. And I think it could have been the best film of the year were not for the weak third act of the film, where I just felt the film lost some of its flair and wit, and was just no longer as bold as before. It dragged a bit there. It did have a great ending, however, so I guess that makes up for it a bit. So yeah, definitely watch this film. I think a lot of people will find this film to be maybe even their favorite of the year. At number 4, Tar. So Tar is a film that features the best performance of the year in my opinion. Cate Blanchett stars as a hugely acclaimed music composer, Lydia Tarr. And this is a riches to rags story, and also perhaps the most in-depth character study of the year. Kate Blanchett is just phenomenal in this, and I think she must be a lock to sweep the entire upcoming award season. The film really benefits from the fact that we get to peek into the absolute elite of an industry that only a tiny fraction of the audience is familiar with, and through the strong writing and being unapologetic in its use of big words, the film hooks us in and slowly uncovers its darker secrets. And this is a film that is many things at once. It's a psychological thriller, it's a riches to rags story, and it's also a story about cancel culture. Either way, it's just really well crafted, it features the strongest performance of the year, and it is culturally relevant, so what more can you want? At number 3, Decision to Leave. So this is a modern neo-noir and a directing masterclass by someone who has just mastered the use of film language. It also just might be the most gorgeous looking film of the year in terms of its cinematography and production design. As all of Park Chan-wook's films, it's full of beautiful, vibrant colors, flashy camera movements, and blocking that even Spielberg would be proud of. I'm also a sucker for film noir detective stories, and although the story and pacing here is not what you'd expect, the influence of Hitchcock can be felt throughout the film. In terms of its tone and themes, I'd say it's a blend of Vertigo and In the Mood for Love, both films that I'm a big fan of, and this isn't a film you can just digest in one viewing. In fact, I think most people might feel underwhelmed by it. It's an incredibly dense and subtle film, and I think a lot of the nuance is also lost in the translation, because there's one of the characters is a Chinese migrant to Korea, and the film implies that she often uses these Korean terms that are just not the right term in the language, but perhaps the perfect word for the situation. And at first I thought I might leave this film off the top 10 entirely after I watched it for the first time. But as time went on, I just kept thinking about the fact that although it might not have had a big emotional impact on me, there's a lot of lead to explore. So I rewatched it and it just came together for this. Like the second time watching this film, everything just came together for me, and this film probably features my overall favorite, not necessarily the best performance, but just my favorite performance of the year by Tang Wei as sort of the femme fatale. In classical noir fashion, the hero falls for a woman and gets sort of morally compromised to pursue her and lets his guard down. This is just a fascinating film that I will definitely want to watch even more times in the future, and I recommend to every cinephile as probably the cinephile movie of the year. At number 2, Top Gun Maverick. I don't remember the last time a film exceeded my expectations as much as Top Gun Maverick did. I remember watching the original on VHS back when I was a kid, and I really loved that film, but when I heard that there's going to be a sequel, I thought it's just going to be another forced money grab with no relevant story to tell, full of these underwhelming action sequences, And then I remember sitting in my local IMAX cinema, and it was like 15 minutes into the film, right after or during the sequence where Tom Cruise flies in this prototype aeroplane and he reaches 10G, and it was just these overwhelming images and incredible sound and all of this in this IMAX cinema. And I remember thinking, okay, if this is what the rest of the film is gonna feel like, then I'm in for a real treat. And the film managed to surpass every conceivable expectations that I might have had for it, and I went to see it 2 more times to make sure that this wasn't a fluke, and every single time I absolutely loved it. It just manages to serve this perfect blend of elements that make up this undemanding, fun, emotional ride that makes you walk out of the cinema with a giant smile on your face. It is a true movie star in Tom Cruise carrying the film, surrounded by a great supporting cast from Miles Teller to Jennifer Connelly to newcomers like Monica Barbaro. It has an epic score composed by Hans Zimmer. It has a cutting-edge blend of cinematography, editing, and sound, thanks to which the film feels incredibly immersive and realistic. It even has a One Republic song that became the song of the summer. All of this is curated by director Joseph Kosinski, whose past works like Oblivion and Tron Legacy have demonstrated a great feel for visuals and attention to detail, but always lacked the warmth and stakes that he manages to achieve here. I'm not sure that people realize just how impressive all these things I mentioned really are, and why I'm rating this film so high when one might perhaps think like this is just an action blockbuster, it's nothing special. Well, I have it as number 2 on my list because this isn't just another action flick. It's a film unlike any that we've seen in recent years. In fact, I actually went back and skimmed through all my other top 10 lists to look for modern blockbusters I could compare it with, and I couldn't really find any film in the past decade that had the perfect blend of cutting-edge, breathtaking action sequences and a heartwarming, feel-good story, charming actors, and no politics shoved down the throat of the audience. And the audiences responded to this film. Top Gun Maverick ended up being the highest grossing film of 2022, and it did so without the Chinese box office. I feel like it delivered the post-COVID cinema experience that people from all walks of life and all age groups just needed and deserved. At number 1, The Fabelmans. So this is just my favorite film of the year. There are many reasons for this. The main one being that no film has made me more emotional, and you know, this is just such a beautiful film where instead of glorifying his career and, you know, just promoting himself as perhaps the greatest filmmaker ever, Spielberg decides to focus on the essence of what shapes any person into an artist, and he does it in such a thoughtful way, full of love. Instead of glorifying himself, he glorifies human connection to art in a very universal way, which results in the audience feeling much more connected to the character of Sammy, because he's someone we can all relate to. At first glance, The Fabelmans might seem like a semi-boring biography of one of the greatest filmmakers of all time that doesn't actually show any of his greatest achievements. But at its core, this is really a family drama, a very personal family drama. It explores the never-ending struggle for understanding between these more practical, pragmatic people and their more abstract, creative counterparts. No film this year had me holding back tears as many times as The Fabelmans. Perhaps it is because of some similarities between my own life and my family and Sammy's family. And here I just feel that Spielberg speaks and I listen, and we perfectly understand each other. This film is just full of love, and it is the last collaboration between Steven Spielberg and John Williams, which has spanned for 50 years. And it's just a beautiful send-off, and it really just marks an end of an era of the Spielberg, Kaminsky, and Williams trio, which honestly might just be the most legendary filmmaking trio of all time. And I'm getting emotional even talking about this film. Even talking right now, like I'm teary-eyed in a little bit, and I don't know. This is just such a beautiful film, and I admire that just how personal and how deep Spielberg went with this, and he just might be the greatest filmmaker of his generation.